Good evening. We'd like to call to order the meeting of the Princeton Public Schools Board of Education. Welcome to this public meeting of the Princeton Board of Education. The board is an elected, unpaid group of 10 citizens who set policy and make decisions on educational, financial, and personnel matters for the Princeton Public Schools on behalf of all residents. We're always pleased when members of the community attend our meetings. The board and the district operate under applicable New Jersey laws and under regulations of the New Jersey State Board of Education. Each meeting includes 3 opportunities for those attending to comment on items of the published agenda or of other items of interest to them. The board reserves the right to limit the time allotted to public participation. Law limits discussion of individual personnel and confidential matters. We hope that our meetings provide useful opportunities for communication between the board and the community, and so thank you for attending. Also, as required under the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice was given for this meeting. It was authorized by the Board of Education and forwarded to the municipal clerk, Princeton Packet, Town Toppings, and the Times, and distributed to schools on the standard distribution list. Now, as many of you may know, we have actually, as I mentioned, 3 opportunities to participate for members of the public. The first is an open forum in the beginning of the meeting. That lasts for 15 minutes, and so I see there's a lot of people here tonight, and so I would just ask that people who participate in that first open forum, which is on any matter at all, that you be mindful of the time of other speakers who are behind you and who are waiting behind you. And so we try to limit that to 15 minutes if we can. We have a separate time for public comment on agenda items in the sort of the middle of our agenda. And then finally, a public comment session on the end for people who would like to react to things that were said during the meeting tonight. So just to give people a sense of the lay of the land, if you'd like to have a time to comment. So with that, I'd like Ms. Kennedy, if you could call the roll.
Patrick Sullivan.
Here.
Daphne Kendall. Here. Betsy Baglio.
Here.
Debbie Braunfeld.
Here.
Justin Doran, absent. Bill Hare.
Here.
Fern Spruill.
Here.
Greg Stenkowitz.
Here.
Connie Witter.
Here.
Evelyn Spahn.
Here.
Abby Emerson.
Here.
And Brian Lee.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we are on to item D. I'd like to have a motion for the adoption of the minutes of our May 23rd, 2017 meeting. Greg, and a second, Debbie.
Okay, online voting is open.
Okay, is that, and we were voted, sir, do you have any questions or comments on the agenda? Anyone? Okay, good. So is the voting complete then, Ms. Kennedy? Okay. So this is our first public session, item C. As I said, it's a 15-minute open comment period. If anyone would like to come to the microphone at this time to address the board and the public, I'd just like to ask that each speaker identify yourself and where you live before you start your comments. Thank you. And I don't, unlike in the past, I don't run a timer. I don't, I'm not gonna, maybe Ms. Kennedy does. Okay. I'm not gonna cut you off, but please just be mindful that there's probably other people who want to speak tonight.
Hello, my name is Elliot Welu. I'm a senior at PHS, and I live on Prospect Avenue. You might be wondering why all of these community members are here today, and I want to explain to you why. So we are here because we want you to know that we care about diversity, inclusion, and race in our school and our district. We also care about narrowing the achievement gap at PHS and increasing the diversity of our curriculum and faculty. We care about equipping students with the appropriate tools to talk about race, and we care about more opportunities for dialogue starting tonight. Many of my classmates, myself included, have prepared things to say tonight, and we understand that you cannot respond in any official capacity because this is public comment, but all we ask for is that you try and learn from our experiences. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Maddie Troilo. I live on Markham Road. I'm a student with Elliot at the high school. I'm also a senior. I'm going to get a little bit more specific than him and talk to some of the particulars that we as students feel need to be addressed by the school community at large. Ooh, is this guy going to stay? All right, awesome. So specifically, this past weekend, we saw that a Black student at our district was suspended as a result of some material in the yearbook that was considered racially insensitive. Now, I think it's important to consider that the racially insensitive term used was one that is used by the Black community with regularity. That absolutely, coming from a white student, would have been inappropriate, and in which case the suspension would have been an appropriate reaction. In this case, of course, we see that a person who has access to that word, who is able to, keep that in their lexicon and use it in their vocabulary, was using it and then was punished by the school. So there's a couple of problems with that are most obvious, but what I want to speak to is kind of the action going forward and what I see happening in the district with this incident involving race and also with some of the incidences that we know have taken place over the past year and a half in the district. So yesterday, a number of us students spoke with Mr. Snyder during break, and first, we really appreciate the fact that we were able to do so. A lot of students at a lot of schools have no access to their administration whatsoever, and the ability to have that conversation is acknowledged and appreciated. However, after our conversation, the majority of us left feeling that future incidences like the one that happened this past week would not be handled any better than the way that this one was handled, nor any better than the way that the beer pong incident was handled a couple of years ago, nor any of the other incidences that have happened in the past year, which the majority of us feel were addressed with kind of a nice PR spin of we're having dialogue and we're moving forward, but absolutely no concrete actions, and a lot of us are very frustrated by that fact. So specifically, the reasons that we don't expect things to get better based on what we've seen so far are the apology that was issued by the district, which grouped together the yearbook photo created by a Black student using a word that was appropriate for her to use, as well as the yearbook photo created by a white student featuring Nazis, literal, actual World War II Nazis, not like quote-unquote Nazis of the today's Trump era, but literal Nazis in their yearbook photo. And rather than the district acknowledging the nuances of the racial complexities of one Black student using the N-word versus a white student portraying Nazis and kind of dividing those and examining those closely and particularly and then explaining those particulars to community members, they grouped them together, said these are all functionally the same, the punishment is the same, and our apology will be a blanket apology, asserting that it's the same thing for a student of an oppressed group to use a word that they've reclaimed as it is for a student who does not belong to the relevant oppressed group to promote Nazism. So that's one thing. We don't feel that that was any kind of apology that indicates future action insofar as it indicates total ignorance to the complexities of the situation. But then beyond that, looking to past incidences, we saw, I'm going to speak specifically to Nazi beer pong. This past month, a student involved in that incident was given a gold key, supposedly the highest honor for character that our district has, while the person who called that out was suspended 2 weeks later. So I'm not sure what I'm supposed to think when a white student involved in perpetrating racism is rewarded and a black student involved in calling it out is punished. That does not tell me that my district is looking to implement the racial justice that it claims to promote in its conversations about racial literacy. So I'm going to stop now because I have a lot of my peers who want to speak tonight, but I would really urge you to consider the way that the words of the district and their focus on discussions and conversations are covering their failure to take concrete, tangible steps to address the actual racism going on in our school every day. And I know that everyone here wants to address that, and so I would urge you to move in that direction as quickly as possible because people are being negatively affected by this every day and don't really have time to wait for any more discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nathaniel Hyman. I live on Ridgeview Road. I'm a senior at Princeton High School. I also hope my computer does not fall off this podium. I want to speak a little bit quickly just because I don't want to take up too much time. So with the increased focus on racism in Princeton, particularly in the schools, I examine the legitimacy of such accusations through a historical perspective. Paul Robeson famously stated that Princeton was spiritually located in Dixie. The school district was one of the last in the North to desegregate, and we gave legend status to a KKK sympathizer who, despite the mass protest of their own students in the nationwide black community, the nearby university retains as the namesake of their public policy school. Regardless of the prestige and pompous self-righteousness, Princeton has been on the wrong side of history before, so I urge all of us not to assume we couldn't be there again. I stand with the other students here today in protest of the recent suspension. If all is as reported in our blog and on Planet Princeton, I would characterize the suspension as a tone-deaf response to a fraction of the most complicated word in the English language being used by a person of the race that word was designed to dehumanize. It took centuries of atrocity for that word to be taken from oppressors and put in the hands of its victims. I see no reason to take it from them. I would mainly like to talk about what I believe to be an underspoken issue at the school, and that is segregation. This message is as much directed at my fellow students as it is at the board. Segregation, while it is de facto, is segregation. First, it's important to mention the racial achievement gap that we have at our school. Due to what is in mind the general academic community's belief, institutional racism, which has parameters and causes that extend far beyond the district's boundaries, we've seen a disproportionately high level of white and Asian students in high division classes and a disproportionately large amount of Black and Latino students in lower division classes. This trend, of course, corresponds with wealthier students being in these higher division courses and less wealthy students being in lower division courses. Seeing that the geography of the town is already so segregated by race, with there being largely white and largely non-white communities, we see this mirrored in our school both in and out of the classroom. It's natural that people who are taking the same classes would want to spend time together out of class and not with people who do not take the same classes with them. So we see white and Asian students forming friend groups that are disproportionately white and Asian, and Black and Latino students forming friend groups that are disproportionately Black and Latino, leading to an astonishing lack of actual diverse interaction. Not to take any blame off of those ignorant enough to take up racist actions, but history tells us these actions are to be expected, although not accepted, when people are so segregated. Ignorance breeds racism, but isolation breeds ignorance. I'm not smart enough to give a specific solution to ending institutional racism or closing the racial achievement gap, but I can say this. Be vigilant. Throw away your colorblind goggles. No oppressed minority is in need of more people who can't recognize them. Look for this segregation and be cognitive that it exists. I understand no concrete numbers or figures were used in just my observation from 10 years in these schools, so I urge you to look for yourself. I'm not calling for complete racial fusion or an end to racial identity, and I'm not calling for anyone to take less or more advanced courses. I'm urging you to look for barriers that we may not have noticed or try too hard not to notice, and to see there's another side and maybe just pay it a visit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Valeria Torres Olivares. I live in Edwards Place. So to move it away from the suspension, I would like to talk more about the curriculum itself. So, as a member of the Hispanic community, I am not represented at all in my school English classes. So, the only book that you can say I am represented in is The House on Mango Street, a book which I read when I was the age of 13 about a student who was supposed to be 13 who was sexually assaulted. And that's all I have to be represented by in the English curriculum. And as a matter of fact, in JW, it's not even on the main curriculum. It's on the summer reading list, which is then part of the time discussed in class. But in reality, summer reading books do not really get discussed and do not go further in depth to what they should be. So I just want to say that. And also, in addition, we could also add way more books discussing said topics, racism, and more representation of the Hispanic community. We could even expand to have authors who have won Nobel Prizes in literature who are Latinos, such as Jose Saramago and Octavio Paz, Carlos Fuentes, a whole list. You can Google. And then, so in addition to this, I would also like to talk more about the classes and the stratification in those classes. So in ESL classes, we see the majority predominantly colored kids, right? When I moved here to Princeton, second grade, I was put into an ESL class. Even though I was born in the United States, I was raised here, and I went to Mexico for 2 years, came back, and in those 2 years that I was in Mexico, my school was half day in English taught by American teachers, half day in Spanish. But I was still put in an ESL class, although my English was perfect. And in addition, for those ESL classes, when I was taken out of class, I was taken out during my core classes, such as math class and English class, instead of being taken out of Spanish, which I clearly did not need. So the only reason why that was fixed, my parents were very hands-on. They spoke to the principal and told them to do it during Spanish class instead. But any other kids who the majority do not have kids who do not have parents who are so involved as my parents are, don't have anyone to speak up for them. And in addition, those kids who are in ESL classes stay in ESL classes, elementary school, middle school, and high school. Those ESL classes are not working to move those kids forward into regular English classes. They're just keeping them in the same system, elementary school, middle school, high school. They're not leaving. That's it. And then many of them end up dropping out of school because the teachers who teach those classes treat them horribly. They treat them as if they cannot learn. It's horrible, and nothing's being done about it. No one's talking about it. And moving away from that, I would also like to talk about student organizations and sports. So, as in field hockey, when I played field hockey and I play ice hockey, I'm the only Hispanic student there at all in those sports. There's one other black student and maybe a few Indian kids, and that's it. And also, that needs to be more accessible for students of color who don't have parents who played field hockey or ice hockey or any other sport that are mainstream when they were younger. So I spoke with Mr. Cochran about this a couple months ago, talking about how it needs to be more accessible, maybe introducing it into gym classes when they're younger, offering equipment that is more accessible to students who cannot pay $300 to play one sport. So that's all I have to say, but thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again. My name is still Elliot, and I still live on Prospect Street. I'm a senior. I should mention that my mom is white and my dad is black. And the main issue I would like to address tonight, which has been brought up, is what we call the racial achievement gap at Princeton High School. This is an issue that has been diagnosed many, many times, and each time grievances are aired and condolences are expressed, usually with references to the pipeline or implicit bias or similar code words. Last week, my classmate brought Dr. Ruha Benjamin to speak to the senior class, and she described the most severe fallacy when discussing race and racism, the ahistorical fallacy. We cannot talk about race and racism in America or race and racism in Princeton without discussing where these racial problems came from and why they continue to permeate our school environment. Racism and ignorance at our school extend beyond students who throw around language of racial insensitivity without understanding its significance, a tiny minority of whom are exposed and reprimanded. It rears its ugly head when we address this achievement gap without understanding its historical context. As Ms. Shirley Satterfield described last week, PHS's racial tracking began as soon as PHS let Black students enroll in 1948. The problem with using the technical word to describe this integration in this context is that it implies that the segregation of Princeton High School has already been done away with. That's not the case. In 1948, Black students were immediately tracked into general education classes, the lowest, least academic level. And 70 years later, where are we? There are still embarrassingly few Black students in advanced classes. Many of these problems still persist because nothing has actively been done to solve them. Nothing has actively been done to help the Black students achieve at a higher level. The bullet has been extracted, but that doesn't mean that the flow of blood will stop or that the wound won't fester. Colorblind policies only hurt us because these opportunities didn't start equal and they never have been made equal. In April, I was playing in the orchestra pit for The Little Mermaid. We put on a dress rehearsal for PPS third graders from across the district, all 4 elementary schools, to get a taste of the show. Looking out, I saw an audience from across different backgrounds. Then I looked around my orchestra, which is 70% East Asian. Then from the pit, I watched the cast, which is 90% white. I was the only Black person in either of those groups in the entire production, which totals nearly 70 kids. I wondered, in the 6 years from third grade to high school, how do students go from a mindset where they are equivalently intelligent, talented, and ambitious to separation? Why aren't Black and Latino students encouraged musically like other students are? It's not because we don't like music. It's not because our parents don't like music. And it's not because we aren't talented. It's because in performing arts, as in many areas, the district is failing to actively encourage students from all backgrounds. This is what Valeria talked about with field hockey. I see this, I know this, my classmates see this, they know this. As James Baldwin said, in reference to the way that the district is trying to increase diversity, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. Today was my last full day of school in this district. Next week, I will graduate. I know that I have done too little, too late. I'll be gone next year, and so will many of these guys, but everyone else is staying. My close friends, classmates, family members. For their sake, I hope that there is deep thought about racial issues in our school, that there is engagement with students, that you hear their voices, that they don't need to come here for you to hear their voices, that you commit to bettering curriculum and faculty diversity unconditionally so that something changes. Because when I'm back here I hope that second semester seniors won't still be coming back here to request the same rational changes.
Any other students?
What they said. Thank you, each of you who spoke and each of you who came here. I'm Roberto Schiraldi. I'm part of Not in Our Town and the newly formed Youth Concerns Committee, something like that. So I'd like to address what we can do about this. Starting point. Truth and Reconciliation, Princeton, especially from my white brothers. For there to be any chance for trust and healing to begin, there first needs to be acknowledgement of the truth. That the country was founded upon the manifest destiny doctrine for the power elite, the wealthy, white, heterosexual males, the original 1%ers, who still have all the power. That the people, the animals, the land, were all here to be used to serve God's anointed ones. Was and core value, the root cause of racism. If we don't about the damage this has done and continues to do to the first people of this land, the Native Americans, and the enslaved people and their ancestors, right here in Princeton. And then 3, consistently demonstrated strategies to make it right. This is the way to know that amends is sincere. Since the system was never set up for anyone other than those in power, it was no accident that Native Americans, enslaved people, women, and others were left out of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. They wanted the Native Americans obliterated and enslaved people kept subservient. The Jim Crow South cleverly morphing into mass incarceration. White colonialism has always been intentionally set up to pit all the different groups against each other, scrambling for a piece of the pie while the wealthy 1% prosper. This original white supremacy is the root cause of all of our implicit biases, which are unintentional, unconscious biases, and white privilege, which are the unearned benefits we have primarily because we have white skin. And here in Princeton, a reflection of the larger culture, black folks and Hispanics have historically been begrudgingly tolerated. This is not about guilt or defensiveness. We don't have time for that. We weren't taught this stuff, so how would we know? We just need to make it right. We, white heterosexual men, must be the ones to stand up and speak this truth about the original white supremacy, the real underlying, hard to uncover, easy to forget white supremacy, not merely the neo-Nazis, KKK, and skinheads who are taught to hate and fear because it served the wealthy white men in power, the bank and corporation owners and government officials who serve them. They are the real problem, not people of color. This is the truth that needs to be taught to our white students, especially by the white men in the school district and the university. Otherwise, why would white students respect black and Hispanic students if they've never been taught this truth about the real white supremacy? If the white students were taught this truth by their parents, then they wouldn't be treating the students of color so poorly. They would be working together with their amazing peers to find ways to hold those in power accountable and to share the wealth fairly with all, the way the founding fathers, in quotes, said they originally intended. So, truth and love can bring us together and unite us to overcome the unjust, greedy, arrogant power values that continue to perpetuate a self-serving, autocratic system which purports to be for all. If the white folks in power here in Princeton, Superintendent Cochran, the Board of Education, Mayor Lampert, and the Princeton Council, President Eisgruber, and the Board of Trustees, along with the churches, businesses, police, human services, all the key players came together with all their resources, power, wealth, intelligence, sensitivity, together with all the rest of us, to do the right thing for all the people, not just the wealthy white folks. You mean to tell me we couldn't turn this around and become a model for other communities? Please. If we came together, united, we can do this, no doubt. P.S. For the young ones who have been so hurt by this racism in school, the white men in power need to say, not "I'm sorry you feel that way," but "I'm sorry we have not done a better job of helping you to feel safe and welcome and respected. And we will do everything in our power to make it right, and we won't stop until we do. We will hold ourselves and each other accountable with a strong message that we won't tolerate this mean-spirited behavior and ensure we give the offenders the counseling and education they need to help them understand why they are behaving that way and how it hurts the students of color and hurts and disrespects their own humanity too. PSS, for the above to happen and to be successful, we must first be courageous and compassionate with ourselves and each other. 2, keep learning about the real history and how it hurts us all. 3, do everything we can to keep uncovering our own white privilege and learn conscious and unconscious biases and share our insights and feelings with other white allies. 4, when we feel defensive or guilty, forgive ourselves for not being perfect and for making mistakes and recommit to improving. And lastly, while we can work beside people of color to address this, it's important to realize that it's not people of color's responsibility to make us feel better about the above. It's ours. This is the perfect moment in time. this. Together, we can do this. We must, for our children and for ourselves. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public at this time?
Hi, my name is Nina Tillman. I'm a junior at Princeton High School and I live on Murray Place. I'd first of all like to thank my fellow classmates for, I don't know if you heard what they were saying, but that kind of proves just how educated and how brilliant they all are, and I appreciate every single one of them. But I'd first like to say that over 30 years ago, my mother graduated from high school and she faced the same things that I face today. That was 30 years ago. So why am I still up here? Why am I still doing this? I'd just like to say that 30 years ago, my mother felt overlooked and underappreciated by her administration and by her teachers, the same way as I do today. I walk through the halls and I feel the hatred not only from fellow students, but from my teachers as well. I shouldn't feel that way at all. The stickers that you have on your doors that say safe space, they aren't true. The signs that you have outside people's houses that say diverse and inclusive and excellent are not true. This school has become violent. It has become a place of hatred for me, to be completely honest. The longer I stay here, the more I want to leave. And even though my fellow classmates gave a more, let's say, political view on things, I'm not. I'm giving my passionate view. I'm giving my personal view because I personally am angry. I am livid. I'm outraged. I'm upset. When my 11-year-old sister comes home and she's crying to me because she's ashamed of the color that she is, because of the stories that I bring home from the school that I attend, then you know that there is a problem. So I just wanted to say that you need to understand that even if Jamaica Ponder graduates, even if Elliot graduates, I'm still going to be here. We are still going to be here. We are still going to fight. We are still going to have our voice. We are not going to let this go away. Just because a blog stopped doesn't mean that our voices will. We want you to know this. We want you to know this is not okay. We want you to know this school needs to fix its problems instead of covering up with media and letters to home. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments in our first open comment session? Okay. This is the time in the meeting, and we're at item E, the president's comments. I don't have that much to say, and I just want to thank everyone who spoke tonight. I will just say that to Mr. Sharabe's point about making change and about making amends for things that have gone on. Two things. Evelyn Spahn and I have been on this board probably the longest time, Evelyn longer than me. I've been here about 5 years. And I'll just say that sometimes it's hard as a board member to say things and have nothing happen. And you think, people say you're in a position of power, which is true, but it's also a position without a lot of levers to pull. And I think everyone on this board who feels strongly about making change also feels that from time to time. I'd say that's probably true. And so the thing that gives us as a board the power to make change is you. So it's very, I appreciate the fact that you're all here tonight. It makes a big difference in terms of making change. So I think Mr. Cochran probably has more to talk about in terms of some of those changes. I know Mr. Snyder's here tonight to talk about some of these changes. One of the things we've been focusing on, as many of the students know, is working on stress and alleviating some of the environmental concerns at the school. And I'm happy to say that I believe finally that something's being done about that, something that the board has talked about for a long time. And again, the room's not often this full, but we have talked about racism and dealing with the racial issues of the schools, which we are aware of. But again, having those levers of power means having you here. And it's something that we do want to focus on in the years ahead. So finally, after 5 years, I feel like some things are beginning to change, and it's very exciting. I just looked at a file that I had from 2013 when we were talking about student stress And had I looked at that last year, I probably would have thrown it across the room. Now I feel a little bit more comfortable that finally something's being done. I think racism and the social environment at our school is something that we all would like to turn to. But again, we're going to need you. So thank you for coming tonight.
So I'm actually going to say a few words about racial literacy and some of what you had talked about in my superintendent's report. This is the time in our agenda when we honor our student board reps. But before I say something about Brian and Abby, I want to echo what Mr. Sullivan had to say and thank the students, the adults who spoke truth tonight. It's important that we hear about the historical injustices that you have experienced from the time you were in the school system early on, the present inequities and injustices you're facing, the anger that you feel at that. It's important that we hear that. It's important that we resonate with what Roberto said about we can do this. It's not going to be easy, but we do need all of us to come together with a vision, with the will to take the actions that are going to change the curriculum, they're going to change the practices, the perceptions, change expectations, change climate. And I know that the people around this table are committed to that. I know the people sitting out there are committed to that. And the student voices, we need to keep hearing those. As painful as they may be to hear, we need to keep hearing those. But when you come back here next year, the change that Mr. Sullivan talked about will continue to happen, and there will be changes. And you will see some of the changes actually on the agenda tonight, things that are moving us forward. So I know that this is a time when it's hard to hope, when it's scared to believe the words that you hear coming from institutions of power, whether it's our own government or whether it's the board or the superintendent. But it's also a time when we need to hope. And I hope that you can hang on to that. So with that, I have the privilege of being able to honor Abby and Brian, who have been our student board representatives. And I was fortunate enough to be asked by Abby and Brian to write a recommendation for them for college. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I thought I would read a few parts because I think it captures their role on this board. At our monthly school board meetings, no one claps when the superintendent concludes his report. On the other hand, when Brian Lee and Abby Emerson give the report, the entire room breaks into applause. Brian and Abby were elected by their peers to serve as student liaisons to the Board of Education. They are, however, decidedly atypical in that role. They do not report on homecoming dances or the record of our sports teams. No, their reports are designed to promote substantive change in our district. Since their first meeting last June, they have reported on homework, community service, and mental health supports. Their reports are based on comprehensive surveys of their classmates, anecdotal evidence, and research-based suggestions. Their work is impressive. So too is their delivery. They present as calm, confident, articulate, and humble. When faced with questions from board members or residents in the audience, they answer thoughtfully and thoroughly. Not a meeting passes when I am not in awe of the maturity and wisdom of these two young people. They recognize their role as students and so are deferential and diplomatic, but they are consistently spot on with their recommendations. I would hire them now if they weren't still in high school. Both Abby and Brian are genuinely passionate about making a difference. Abby is committed to dispelling the stigma around seeking help for mental health concerns. Brian wants to see changes in our community service requirements that will help students internalize a value rather than simply checking a box. Brian and Abby are truly among the smartest, most articulate, and most sincerely motivated young people I've ever met. And here's the kicker. They are also among the most kind and collaborative. Brian and Abby, I am truly grateful for your service and your friendship. On behalf of the board and all of us in the district, we wish you luck in all of your future endeavors. You will always be remembered for your legacy of leadership on this board. And we promise to invite you back for the first morning of a later start time at the high school. Although you will probably be fast asleep in your college dorm beds at that point. Thank you both very, very much. We have a little token of our appreciation. You want to help me with this? Sure. Let me take those. I'll take these.
I'd just like to say, just very briefly, second that, Brian and Abby, thank you for all of your work. Steve mentioned many years ago, when I first started, the student reps really did talk about the homecoming dance and, who won the last, whatever sports tournament. And over the years, happily, we've gotten people who were more activists along the way. I remember one year there were many teachers in the room, and suddenly, one of the student reps spoke up about APs and whether those were the best way to teach courses, and the teachers, I think, were surprised to hear that. But over the years, we've seen people like Brian and Abby have a lot of passion about the issues that they're interested in, be it mental health, be it especially student stress. And I remember last year's board representatives, Maddie and Nick, were also interested in those very issues, spoke about them passionately every board meeting, and then graduated and went away. And I really felt badly that we couldn't show them more tangible, outcomes for all the things that they were so passionate about advocating for. It really, I'll tell you, in a public entity especially, it really takes time and it takes consistent effort over a period of years. And it shouldn't. I don't think it should. It just does. That's what I've learned. And so, Brian and Abby, I'm really happy that the next presentation that we're going to hear is Principal Snyder to talk about some of these issues. And I just want to reflect on that to the people in the room tonight. Many of you are graduating, and it's unfortunate, but the people who are younger, come back, and it's going to take time, but we will get there. So thank you for all you've done. I think you've shown the way for many people. Okay, and now it's back to you,
Yeah,
and
okay.
your superintendent's comments.
So, good evening, everyone. Welcome once again. Glad to have so many of you here tonight and people watching at home. Tonight we have a presentation from Mr. Snyder on some bold and innovative changes that he and his staff are proposing at the high school. But before I introduce Gary, I want to spend a few minutes on some important issues and announcements for our community. And I want to begin by talking about racial literacy, the topic that really began this meeting tonight. In the past 2 weeks, I've been privileged to be part of several community-wide conversations on the fostering of racial literacy and reconciliation in our schools and in our town. Those conversations have been difficult, often painful, but they have been critically important. I have heard, particularly from some of our students of color, about their feelings of not being supported and about the anger and fear that has generated. I apologize to those students for the ways we have failed to support you, and I pledge to continue to work with this board, this staff, and this community to continue to listen and to act. We are facing some complex issues right now, issues that deal with the yearbook, with free speech, with the use of the N-word, with community standards, with consistent discipline. We will sort them out thoughtfully and compassionately. Racial literacy is not about the eradication of racism. It is about developing the skills and the culture that help us to have honest, authentic, respectful conversations about race. conversations that preserve the dignity of all parties without backing away from real hurt and real injustice. Conversations, most importantly, that lead to real changes. Changes in policy and practice, changes in curriculum and instruction, and most of all, changes in expectations and climate. Racial literacy is ultimately about our relationships with one another. I know the people sitting here tonight are committed to those changes, and I know all of us are inspired by the students for whom those changes will make the biggest difference. We had an opportunity to be inspired by some of those students at the Not in Our Town Unity Award ceremony this past Sunday. For the first time, the ceremony was led by students for students. I am proud of all of the students from our middle school, the high school, and the charter school who were acknowledged for their leadership in advocating for social justice. I'm equally proud of the students who received scholarships last night from Fund 101. I know a number of the board members were there last night. These are students who are the first in their families to go to college and are selected on the basis of their character, their service, their need, and their scholarship. And the students received awards that will help them financially throughout their years in college. This coming school year, Fund 101 is proud to be supporting PHS seniors and PHS graduates currently in college with close to $125,000. And I now turn to the recommendation on tonight's agenda for the new principal of Little Brook Elementary School. And I want to also acknowledge the many staff members and perhaps a few parents from Little Brook who are here tonight. Very nice to see you all. I knew that when I asked Annie Kosick to join me here in central office as the assistant superintendent, that finding the right person to follow her at Little Brook was not going to be an easy task. We started with over 175 applications. We had a search committee interview about a dozen. We had 2 finalists who met with staff and parents at Little Brook. And after that long and probably arduous process, I am honored, proud, and truly excited to share with you that my recommendation for the next principal of Little Brook Elementary School will be Louis Ramirez. Now, Louis, you can actually sit down for one moment while I say a few things about you, or you can come up here. Come up to the microphone. That's fine. Okay. All right. So, Louis is, for those of you who don't know him, and I know some of you do, he's currently the principal of a large elementary school in North Brunswick, where he is viewed as a caring, energetic, and truly visionary instructional leader. He has detailed knowledge of reading and writing workshop and everyday mathematics. He served as an elementary school assistant principal in Millstone Township, where I had the honor to work with him closely. I know Louis to be a person of character, intelligence, occasionally of humor.
Occasionally?
And in addition, Louis worked in West Windsor as their technology specialist, as an elementary school teacher, as an instructional support teacher, and I believe he began his career as a bilingual teacher at a middle school in Philadelphia. What stood out to most people who interacted with Mr. Ramirez throughout the search process is that he is a champion of children. He truly wants to be a member of a learning community. I couldn't be happier to have him here with us tonight. Please join me in welcoming Louis Ramirez to the Princeton Public Schools. Yeah, you can say something if you want. Absolutely, since you're up there at the microphone.
Mr. Cochran and all the members of the Board of Education, to all the wonderful children here who spoke their mind this evening, I applaud you for that. To the staff of Little Brook and to the students and the community of Little Brook, I am looking forward to working with each and every one of you. My staff can tell you that my decisions are made with the students' best interests in mind, and I'm looking forward to being a part of helping move things forward at Little Brook Elementary School and working with such fine individuals as yourselves. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I truly appreciate it, and I look forward to working with every one of you.
Thank you, Louis.
We just want to make sure he feels welcome. I'm not wearing a scarf, but they are. We want to make sure that you're ready.
Very nice. So for those, yeah. Huh? Yeah, for those of you who cannot see or watching at home, the staff at Little Brook gave Mr. Ramirez a Little Brook polo shirt. It's very nice, actually. I don't think I have one of those. Yeah. Thank you all. And now, the presentation you've been waiting for. For the past 9 months, the PH faculty and administration have been considering a range of bold recommendations in both instruction and schedule designed to deepen student learning and enhance student wellness. Their ideas have been grounded in research, best practice, and a genuine care for kids. I've been inspired by their work and by Mr. Snyder's leadership of this effort. Gary? The floor is yours.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I'll spend a little bit of time telling you about the Bell Schedule Committee. And there's a story behind this. We've had a lot of conversation. We've done a lot of work. We've done a lot of research to get to maybe the last slide in the presentation. But if we skip to the last slide, we would miss the point. We quickly stopped calling ourselves a Bell Schedule Committee, and so we put BSC 17 on there because early on we knew the conversation was much more than about the Bell Schedule. The Bell Schedule will be what people will talk about. It is what you will see. It is what we will experience. But if this committee we knew and we know that if only the Bell Schedule changes, we really have made no change. And so we started with a fresh approach. There is the we. We had teachers from every department on the committee to represent, supervisors, parents, and we've had student presenters along the way. We've had a number of meetings. We've used the LMS as a format for us to be able to communicate and share information and share learning. The group truly has been a learning community and has tried to make good use of trying to solve problems and coming together around the research to make the recommendations that we're talking about tonight.
Sorry, Gary, what's LMS?
Learning Management System, which is our Power School Learning, is the correct term for that, right? Sorry. So again, early on, we've identified ourselves as a Bell Schedule. That was our charge, to study the Bell Schedule. But for weeks and maybe months, several of our meetings, it was a Bell Schedule committee that didn't talk about Bell Schedules. We talked about the need to shift curriculum, the need to change instruction, the need to change assessment, the need to work with curriculum, to think differently about our curriculum, to think differently about the space, the physical space, the time space, to think beyond our walls. And that is not easily done. We are, most of us, programmed in a high school mindset or a school mindset that talks about bells and an approach that seems very confined to boxes and is very linear, and we've tried to open up that in our conversation. So we've been approaching it in a problem-based way, which ultimately becomes a model for how we are looking for education and schooling to continue at Princeton High School, where students and teachers together identify problems, much like we heard about tonight, and that we can work on those problems in real time, in real life, with the curriculum at hand, and come to good solutions, good creative solutions. So the committee took that approach. We tried to identify the issues, many of which were identified for us well ahead of time, to collect the information, to study, to do research, to read other educational documents, to brainstorm, to have creative ideas. In that process, early on, we we worked hard, and the committee did well to not stop ourselves with ideas. In other words, we did not say, this would be a good idea, but we can't do it. We tried to take the but you can't do it statements off of the table and just continue to say, well, why not? Maybe we can. If that's what the research suggests and that's what we think we should do, then we will continue to pursue it. We've used these 4 C's, these words to guide us, that our problem solving was contextual. It's about Princeton High School. We did look at other schools, but we did not necessarily go shopping to pull a solution off of a shelf from someplace else. We wanted to, it was specific to Princeton High School and what we're trying to do. We wanted, and we have been, creative to come up with our own solutions, to let our minds work and to make connections and to bounce ideas off of each other. It has been considered, which is another way of saying it's been very thoughtfully communicated with each other. We've bounced ideas off of each other. The teachers take it back to their departments. We've tried to share it and keep that conversation as wide as we possibly could. And lastly, we look for it to be consequential. In other words, there can be long-term change, sustainable change from these things, and change that can go beyond Princeton High School. So we've tried to model this process. We came away with, in our work, a few specific objectives and some of the issues that we were trying to address. So certainly looking for a way that would promote both student and staff well-being. That is, the stress, the other indicators of that folks aren't necessarily thriving in a well-being sense at the high school with the stress and the other demands on us. And we looked at that from both student and staff to see how that could be addressed. The learning, we began to capture this phrase of deeper learning as opposed to superficial learning, as opposed to going through curriculum that starts in September and we rush to an exam in May or June on a superficial level, and always having to stop saying we don't have enough time to go deeper and to have to carry on. And so we want to make time to be able to go deeper and have a curriculum that allows us to go deeper, and instruction that fosters that, and assessment that measures that appropriately. So we wanted to also in all this foster collaborative problem solving, interdisciplinary, creative, and critical thinking. A lot of buzzwords in there perhaps, but truly the essence of the conversations of the committee of what we are looking to do. And I will always keep repeating, it ends up with a bell schedule. If that is the only thing we change, we really haven't changed anything. So we'll get to that point, and I just keep saying that because here's what we're really looking to do in a few short words. Again, we're really trying to make this shift from 20th century education, 20th century high school, to 21st century. You can picture 20th century. You have hallways with classrooms, one after another. Sometimes that's described as an egg crate setup. It's the curriculum, the classrooms, the system seems to be in blocks. It's very linear. You take this course, you go to the next course. It's sequential. You have walls. The curriculum is that way. The time is that way. The space is that way. The calendar is that way. The standardization is that way. The tests are that way. And you're on your own in a lot of those cases. It's not a collaborative process. And we came upon this phrase that it is high schools teach in a manner that is just in case. We try to teach you everything just in case you need it someday. As opposed to a 21st century approach where there are more open spaces, both in time and in physical space. We are talking about space needs at the high school. As we envision the different spaces that we need, we would hope this would guide that process as well. That we're not necessarily, though we might need more classrooms, we're also looking for more open spaces that things can happen in. Our students now, with their teachers, at times work in the hallways on different projects and in different things, and that's good, but also we're trying to encourage that and foster that with spaces that can allow that to happen also. Again, high schools are very departmentalized, so looking to break free of that and be more collaborative, more interdisciplinary in the problem solving. problem solving like this conversation about a bell schedule is not simply one academic area. So any problem that we approach, we're not looking to only approach it from a math perspective or an English perspective or a science perspective, but those groups working together. Looking to have performance assessments and less pencil and paper tests, more experiential, not all academic, learning it from the book in class. And then the opposite of just in case is just in time learning. That in our 21st century, most of us are operating a lot with just in time learning. If something comes up in conversation tonight that someone doesn't know what that means, you're probably going to reach for your phone and Google it and do a quick search. That's just-in-time learning. You learn what you need when you need it. It's important to you, it's connected to your thought, and it's not simply an assignment, a lesson that's in class that you're not engaged with. And then, as I said, it's problem solving. So I am getting to the nitty-gritty here because we've gone on for hours, and I can go hours. I know you don't have hours, so I'll try to speed along to some of the steps that we're looking to take. We're talking about large change that we want to be sustainable change, and therefore it cannot happen overnight, but the committee is recommending that it happens in stages. Those stages have already started. We've been experimenting with a slight schedule change last week and this week. It's not gigantic, but it's a piece that we're looking to do. We added 8 minutes to have a 12-minute long passing time in the morning. It's not large. It's one step, but it's also around the idea that we need to slow down. We need a chance to take a breath in the morning, to go to your locker, say hello to friends, whatever it might be. So we're looking to add that into the schedule for the 2017 school year, that morning break, unless we come up with a better name for it. We're also looking in the future to add longer blocks of time beyond the 45-minute class periods that we have now. We want to practice that in 2017-18. So as teachers, we want to, and we will be doing professional development. Curriculum work is being done this summer. We will be looking to do professional development in the fall. We will then have a few times during the year where we will have a schedule that gives us longer blocks of time to practice with problem-based learning, to practice with having that time and how to arrange a lesson plan. It can be done. Schools do it. It does take professional development and adjustments in curriculum for us to get there. So we're looking to have weeks during the 2017-18 school year that we would do that. To make that a little bit more concrete for you. So for example, there's an in-service day, I believe it's early October. We'll start the school year with a schedule like we're having right now with our schedule that we've had for years. Insert the mid-morning break, but then somewhere, we'll have to look at the calendar, second, third week of October, have a week of all longer periods. Finish the first quarter, go into second quarter, and in place of the exam schedule we've had the last few years, a different schedule in that mid-January time, again, to have time for problem-based learning, longer blocks of time. There still might be a test in that time, of course, but it would be largely, again, time for teachers and students to experience the longer blocks of time. And that curriculum work and professional development work then is ongoing. Need one more slide, Gabe. Got it? No? No? What? It's okay. So 17, 18, continue, see if we can get another slide up there, is a transition year until ultimately looking at 2018, 2019, the year that you would see larger, more significant schedule changes. And those begin to come in a different form. I'll get to those without the slides, and if Gabe can get to them, I'll look to see what I may have missed. In 2018, to start that school year, the committee is recommending a number of things. One is to shift the start of the school year 1 week earlier before Labor Day. The committee, as it has looked at time, is looking at that week as a more valuable instructional week than this last week in June. And we understand the ramifications of what that might mean, and it's one that's why we're looking at and making the recommendation that it's 2018, more than a year away for adjustments that might need to happen. There it is. Some of the components for 2018, 2019. The second one there, the research, educational research, like a lot of research can conflict, can contradict each other, and on what, depending on the researcher. The research on the start time for high school students is clear. The recommendation, the ideal time from the research is 8:30. We are suggesting 8:20. In all of these pieces that we are recommending, again, we tried to approach it from problem solving, using the research, trying to make good recommendations, understanding that there are a lot of other details that have to get worked out behind the scenes for those kinds of changes. Again, that's why we're saying it would be more than a year away to make those changes. The class periods in 2018, 2019 would rotate. The morning classes would rotate, and the afternoon classes would rotate, not all the way through. And some of our students have half-day programs in different places. Some of our teachers are part-time. So a rotation in the morning and the rotation in the afternoon takes into some of those accounts. But the rationale behind that then is not, you won't have the same class in the beginning of the day every day. It would move throughout the morning, and you won't have the same class last period, the end of the day. It will move throughout the afternoon. The schedule that we are suggesting has a lot of variables in it. It is meant to break up the routine so it's not the same thing day in and day out. It has long periods and short periods. It has rotation, and then through the year have looking to have other times available for other things. I know there's a slide somewhere. I may have missed it, Gabe. Maybe I didn't put it. It's okay. One of the pieces that also informed our work and was very important to us, and I've repeated it many times since, Marzano is a name in education, and Marzano has looked at all of the curriculum. He has listed K through 12 curriculum and has attempted to put hours, he has in his research, put hours to that to measure how long it would take. And he asserts it would take 23 years to go through the entire curriculum of a K through 12 school district. And we've looked at that and said that there's a lot of reasons to explain why we are stressed and running as fast as we can to do as much as we can do. That is one piece of it. And so when we speak about the curriculum and making changes in the curriculum, we are talking about taking a step back and not trying to continue to complete 23 years in a K through 12 system or whatever that equates to for 4 years of high school. And to do that takes a different approach to the teaching and learning. It takes a thematic approach. It takes a problem-solving approach. It means we may not go from chapter 1 to chapter 2 to chapter 3 in some linear way, but a way that steps back from that and allows us time to go deeper. So this slide talks a little bit about how we've thought about this. We've thought of ourselves as architects, and so we have put drawings onto paper that I can share with you and for you to begin to look at what this bell schedule might look like in 2018. In that sense of building, and it's only a sketch. There are details to be worked out when the engineers, so to speak, as we begin to look closer at this and try to put together what the architects have designed. I'm sure there will be some pieces that don't exactly work that we'll have to make some adjustments to. with the goal of staying true to the specifications that we've set out to really make change to curriculum instruction and assessment, to really allow ourselves to go deeper into the curriculum, to not be just simply run and driven by a curriculum and a time schedule that gives us no chance to breathe, no chance to talk, no chance to have stronger relationships with each other, to address a lot of the topics that need to be addressed in high school. There is a sample of 2018-2019. It, and the Bell schedule, and some of them are here tonight, as we've talked about this many times, and to then share it with folks who haven't seen it before and haven't been with us through the conversations, it can be confusing. But I think you can begin to see some of the components that it would be a Monday through Friday schedule in 2018-19, that it would start at 8:20 in the morning, which it would end at 3:20 in the afternoon. There are some pieces that are not included in there yet that we have to work out those details yet, but you see that if you can, some days have an 8-period day, some days have a 4-period day. So that Tuesday and Wednesday, period 3 is a double period. So depending on how you cut that time and how long lunch break is, which on those days we would be looking to make lunch break longer, and still talking about a longer lunch break on other days as well. You might have 88-minute classes, again, depending on how that time gets broken out on a Tuesday. And then you see, and this would be different also, so then on Wednesday, your Wednesday classes, you haven't seen that teacher since Monday. And then you can, on the other ways that works around, you can see there, so you don't meet with your teacher 5 days a week. There will be a time that you don't. And then you see your Thursday and Friday, and you see the rotation begins to change. There is actually to go through the rotation so that it is equitable on periods being first and last and in the middle. It actually takes 10 days to go through a rotation, which I did not include. The second week looks much the same, but the rotation is slightly different in the bells. Again, it has the qualities of allowing space for the electives and the courses that students want. It has time on Tuesday and Wednesday to go deeper, and presently only the science department has the time for double periods, and this was a conversation that we wanted to provide time in every department for all students to have time to go to a longer class period, to go deeper into a subject with their teachers, and that's reflected in Tuesday and Wednesday. We had some conversation at first that looked more symmetrical with a Monday, Wednesday, Friday kind of a look to it, and Tuesday, Thursday. But through conversation with the faculty throughout the year, the idea of having those 2 longer period days back to back made sense for people. Your science labs, in addition to your long period on Tuesday, Wednesday, science lab would be on either Thursday or Friday, depending on how that played out for you. And your phys ed would be on a few days of that week as well, not on your lab day on Thursday, Friday. And it would be, you would have one of those, like all classes, in the long period days on Tuesday, Wednesday, your phys ed class would be in there, where you would have one long period of phys ed, and through the week meet your phys ed requirement. And those are the details. Again, there's a lot into that. We could spend a long time getting into the nitty-gritty of it. There are details to be worked out. One piece that we are working out is where to place peer group in that sense, because that Wednesday schedule is different than our present Wednesday schedule. So a couple of ideas where peer group could be. So a few other tweaks yet to make, and we have time to do that. Goes back to 2017, next year. Before we get to 2018, where we would have these long blocks twice a week. Next year is the time for us to practice and experiment with that time to prepare for 2018.
Okay.
Thank you.
Open for questions.
So Gary, just a couple questions. In terms of the Challenge Success Survey, one of the issues was just the absolute amount of work that people were doing.
Right.
And in student achievement, we talked a little bit about homework, and I wonder if you could address the homework
Yeah.
part of this, of your work.
Yes. The Bell schedule and the faculty as a whole, we've had a number of in-service days, and I appreciate the time that we were allotted this year to have those in-service days to have and do this work. And there is specific work around the, I'll go back from the survey, which provided us with a lot of information, homework being a piece of that, to then look at how we can reduce those homework hours. There are teachers this summer who are working on that, specifically ninth grade teachers will be working on that as a focus to reduce homework hours. And we will continue to do that. And I know a piece of that is to continue to find a way that we will identify those hours and continue to focus in on minimizing and decreasing those hours. The schedule in a structural way tries to address that as well. The idea that you won't have every class 5 days a week, that there would be a day in there that your class might not meet, and also those different blocks of time to give some attention towards homework and homework issues. One of the other pieces that we talked about, which are still is not impossible, still could play in, two things actually. We have looked at, in that schedule, separating ninth grade science and phys ed, which I know I'm getting into the weeds of the details, which in essence would give ninth graders a free period if their phys ed and their science are not connected. We've also have talked about a time during that week that we might create time for other students to have homework time, help and make up time during the school day. We've seen that in the research that is a beneficial time. An example of how we might do this is if we put peer group in one of those days and created time for other students to be with teachers for help and make up and homework, that may be a way that we address it. So peer group as it stands is at the end of a Wednesday. It doesn't have to be at the end of a day. It could be inserted into a day. So that the piece of homework, which is your question, we're specifically addressing to decrease homework. The second part of the survey that we learned is that idea of engagement. So we're working equally hard to increase engagement. So it's decrease homework, increase engagement, which again comes around to that concept of deeper learnings. Learners are more engaged when the material is relevant to them, when they are given time to explore it more deeply.
So, yeah, and that's something that didn't occur to me right away, but because I was looking at all the schedule changes and I was thinking, well, how does this make a student's day any lighter than it was before? It's just shifting around things. But actually, the fact that in many days there are less classes in a day ought to mean that therefore there's less homework. But I'd like to also just mention what we talked about in student achievement, that for freshmen, we're talking about a homework sort of, guideline of about an hour and a half a day relative to what we saw kids doing now, which is 3.5 plus hours a day for some of them. We also talked about you creating a methodology to measure homework for all grades, just so we can begin to start looking at that. And, because what gets measured gets managed. If we don't know how much homework people are doing, how can we ever do anything to adjust that? So I guess you will be developing a homework measurement system over the summer.
Yep.
Yes? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think it's a tremendous start, and I want to thank you, and I know the whole team has worked really hard on this. This is a real change. It's exciting. Brian and Abby, I'm sure you may have seen it before, but it's very exciting for what you've done. So we want to thank you for all of your work and really getting behind this, which you've done. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to echo Pat's
statements. We said earlier that, you know, we're a bureaucracy and we move slow, but with regard to the 9th grade changes, we were all very concerned when and as I know you were, when the Stanford engagement survey showed that our 9th graders immediately were as stressed as juniors. And so I want to thank you and your team for addressing that. And I know we'll all sleep a little easier knowing the freshmen will go into an easier situation that will be better managed for them. So thank you.
Yeah, we don't want our freshmen to be as stressed as juniors until they're sophomores, so, you know.
Any other questions from the board?
Gary, this just sounds very thoughtful. I look at the team that put this together, and while you've explained it, you're so good. While you've explained it in a very simplified way, I understand this is big change, and it's very complicated to take that many students and to be able to arrange them and to get them into classes and to move them about the building appropriately. This is really big. And I really appreciate your team and the work they've done and the thought that's gone into this. But I think that you've prioritized what our students have told us and what they need. I think that 8-minute break in the morning, that doesn't sound trivial to me. That sounds like a minute to catch their breath, a minute to go to their locker, because they did walk in the door and their head, it was spinning. So I think all of those things are considerate. You've been at this as long as I have at the same school. So I really do respect what this team has done. And I don't think these changes are going to come without growing pains. And I think everyone in this room will see the, oh, they can't do that because, and I appreciate that you said, we're going to do this. So I really do applaud your efforts and everything that you're going to go through in the next 2 years to make this happen. So thank you so much.
Appreciate it. I haven't said it clearly enough, and I should. The faculty has been wonderful this year. We started in September with conversations about looking at things differently, having an open mind. We've talked about creativity and what that might mean, and folks have been open and have at times, and I think still truly are, there's times, there are pieces on this that we're not quite sure how it might work out, and yet folks are excited. It's important for me to say students want change, so do the adults. We're not necessarily just happy teaching the way we teach either. So for folks to be liberated, to be able to be creative, we've had some teachers do that already, that they can take time to go deeper into a project and be told, I'm telling them it's okay. And they're saying, oh, but what if I don't get to this material? If you get deeper into this, that is perhaps arguably more valuable than continuing to go superficial through everything. So teachers are excited by that, and they can feel that sense of being able to be creative.
But the amazing thing about what you said is that for the same people that ooze that out of our children, the creativity, the thinking out of the box, you would think it would be natural for them to do it. So for you to do that for them and with them is a big step. And I would hope our teachers would be doing that. But I really want them to be happy, Gary. I really want those teachers to really live and breathe what they're teaching our children to do. Because if they're happy, everyone's happy.
It is part of again, I'll just end with, it ends with the bell schedule. It is part of a larger change of what students and teachers are both working towards, and you are all working towards the same things and what we're trying to do.
It starts with believing we can do it.
Yeah.
So Gary, thank you. The work that your committee has done, the work that the faculty's invested in, as you said, it's not just about changing time. It's about the way we are looking at instruction. It's not about racing through to cover curriculum. It's about uncovering it in deep ways. It's taking us out of the boxes of our classrooms and our disciplines and helping students and teachers engage together in interdisciplinary, real-life problem solving. And the work you're doing has implications clearly for learning at the high school. It has implications for us district-wide. So all of us are grateful for the leadership that you've taken, and look forward to seeing it all unfold.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so just as in the spirit of time management, one of the things that we've tried to do this year is tighten up on some of the, if you've ever been to a board meeting, you know, in the past, we used to spend a lot of time on agenda items and voting on things, and we're trying to concentrate that so we can spend more time having conversations like we've had tonight. And unfortunately, sometimes when we do that, the meetings go till midnight. But that's not going to happen tonight. I just wanted to let you know. We have our board committee reports. The committees of this board do really great work, and there's so much going on in terms of all of the areas that we're involved in, whether it's facilities, student achievement, personnel. There's just a tremendous policy, just a tremendous amount happening. And so we're going to go through those board committee reports, and then we're going to have some very quick votes, which are kind of concentrated all into one, and then we'll have one more public comment session, and we'll close. So I don't think we're going to be too much longer. But with that, we're on item I. Well, HIB is a consent item. So we're going to go right to item I. And so just so board members know, we're just doing item I, and then we have a vote on J, M1 and 2, and P13, and everything else is consent. So, so at any rate, if we can just turn to the board committee reports, and we'll start with our student board members for your final report. So it's a bittersweet moment here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sullivan. And I'm going to need everyone to bear with me for a little bit, especially my classmates who have already been here for 1.5 hours. Originally, we did have a speech written out, but I think now we're going to switch to something else, given all that you guys have said. And basically, we're trying to read scribbles off of paper at the moment, so I apologize for any struggles here. So first of all, the two of us want to thank our classmates for their efforts and their stories and daring to say what is easy to ignore and is hard to acknowledge. We also want to apologize to our classmates for the lack of substantive change regarding racial issues. But having sat here for the last year, we know that it's truly your unwavering dedication to making change, to never settling, that makes a difference in the end. So thank you so much for that. So watching you guys wait out our tedious logistical and bureaucratic issues, Abby and I are really proud of you guys, because though sports games and academic competitions are great, it's really watching you guys unite here on issues that truly matter, sitting through boring speeches that really tells us that you guys are making a difference, and it's really inspiring to see you guys do this. I apologize if my speech is boring as well. So traditionally, we would be just saying our goodbyes in this report, but instead, we chose to use these last few weeks to address something from the Stanford survey, which is the gender gap in PHS. And unfortunately, our presentation fails to address the elephant in the room today, but we hope it will bring about insight into how we, as a school, as a community, as students, can work together to generate productive discussions, and not only discussions about these issues, but on solutions of how we can solve them and create equity for all. So last Tuesday, in collaboration with the guidance department, we spent 2 periods hosting our PHS gender gap discussion panel. Many of the students here were actually in attendance that day. And we implemented an application process asking students for their name, grade, gender, and then a short paragraph about why they wanted to join and what they felt they could contribute to the conversation. And by doing this, we were able to ensure a diverse range of student backgrounds and opinions coming from all grades, all genders, encompassing individuals ranging from female club leaders to even students skeptical about our data. And though we recognize that these voices could not possibly fully encompass the entire student body, they were sufficiently diverse to create a productive discussion, enlivened by the enthusiasm of argument and dissenting opinion, rather than just the reinforcement of ideas. Our core question was, what are the root causes of the statistical gender gap at PHS, and how do we address them? And with that, I'm going to pass this over to Abby, who has been the incredible driving force behind this deeply personal agenda.
So I found it kind of important to mention that in the application process, we received several students who replied jokingly to the application, and there are usually a few joke responses, but more than that, they felt the need to bash what we were doing and comment on the fact that there was no gender gap, and like the wage gap, it was a myth, and women should just complain less. So I think hearing those responses from some of our students was really hard, but also just another reinforcement that goes to show that there is a problem at our school. So with that, we passed out a packet called PHS Gender Discussion Panel, Consolidated Results to everyone here. And on the second page, so the page after the cover page, we made a list of the causes that we found in the panel, as well as the solutions that we came up with. We also want to say that although we did find these causes and these solutions, there's no way to know if these are 100% right, but we think these are good starting off points for our school. So I wanted to go through all of the solutions just to kind of give our reasoning behind them. So the first two, encourage teachers to reach out more often to all students and make teachers have professional development days and to make them aware of the gender gap. So one student brought to our attention a study that shows that doctors prescribe medication to black patients less than white patients. And studies show that when you make the doctor aware of this problem, it goes away almost entirely. So it found that when people became aware of their unconscious biases, they were able to reevaluate the situation and and it worked out better for everyone in the end. And so now University of Texas Medical School at Houston, University of Massachusetts, and University of California, San Francisco include formal lessons on unconscious bias as part of the curriculum for their students. And this is all sourced from an NPR podcast called Can Healthcare Be Cured of Racial Bias? So if you want to check that out. But we thought this was would be really interesting to see if we made our teachers more aware of this problem, could they fix their own unconscious biases as well? And encourage all students to reach out to them and make all students feel welcome to come and visit them anytime. The next point is inclusive curriculum reform to elevate the role of women in social progress, so history, science, language, etc. So in my history textbooks, I usually have a full chapter explaining all the male accomplishments, and then I get one paragraph, women in the 1900s, and you're like, oh, right. And it's just like one heading, one bullet point, or one subheading, and that's it. And so it's definitely something that other people have noticed. I know I'm not the only one. And with some of the history courses going from AP classes to advanced topic, I think it's important that we supplement some of our teaching materials to include other female role models and historical figures at the same as much as we can. And the next bullet, health curriculum reform to focus on gender and mental health. So we had a wide variety of opinions at our gender discussion panel, and someone brought up the demographic breakdown of the survey by gender. So we had 49% of female respondents, 49% of male respondents, and 2% of other respondents. And this person decided to say, well, I don't really think that there's 2% of people at PHS who identify as other. Like, that doesn't seem right to me. There must have been joke responses in there, which means not all the data is correct. And it was brought to my attention that no, those numbers are pretty correct based on how our students identify. and he was left in the dark about all the different ways to identify, such as transgender, non-binary, etc. So he was, could have been people in the room that I didn't identify and identify themselves as other on the survey, and you don't realize that sometimes what you're saying is offending other people around you. And I think having the health curriculum be able to focus more on gender identity could clear up some of this confusion when we have students identifying in other ways that other students aren't acknowledging. Okay, this next one is probably the one I found most interesting: discouraging cheating and changing testing practices. So the survey showed that more males than females were cheating, and males and females had spent equal amounts of time on extracurriculars, but males had more free time than females. So why was that? So we think that this one actually stems from societal norms. Society tells males and females very different things about how to behave and what careers to pursue. So we just know from statistics that males are more likely to take risks, and males also feel like they can get away with things. Just bringing up recent court cases, so sexual assault, Brock Turner, Stanford, 5 charges, he had a potential 14 years in prison. He only received 6 months and left prison after 3 months. And you see all these things in the media, and the media is telling males, well, you can get away with things, you can take these risks, and you can. And I think that, there's plenty of examples like that, and I think that while we're not telling our boys this actively in the school, I think society is telling them this. And females in CEO position of Forbes top 500 companies, there's more males named John than there are females in Forbes top 500. And females are made to feel like they need to work harder, and they're held to higher morals. And I think these differences make males feel like they can cheat more than females. And I'm not saying females don't cheat ever, because 90% of our students were found to have cheated in some sort of way over their entire high school career. I think these differences led to, or we felt that these differences led to males studying less than females because they had more free time on their hands, because they were cheating on the assignments more, which meant less sleep for females and a more overall school stress for females. And there's a lot of different degrees of cheating. Having your phone out during a test is not the same as copying someone's math homework one night, but it still all adds up and affects our day-to-day lives, our sleep schedule, our free time, and our stress levels. So our solution for this was to crack down on cheating, but also teachers need to re-examine their tests. We can't crack down on cheating without understanding why our students are feeling the need to cheat. And I think it's really important that we address that. And next, evaluate equivalency of consequences for genders. So this goes along with the awareness issue I talked about before, and our inherent biases cause teachers to assign different consequences to different genders, and it's important we check these biases and work on reevaluating. Perform further research and surveying to understand demographics of students within different types of classes. Our physics department is taught by all male teachers, and our biology department is taught, or accelerated biology department is taught by all female teachers. So how do the classroom, and we do need to do some research on how the classroom demographics work out, how many more females are in biology than physics. But studies show that young girls have ambition in science and math, and then in middle school this ambition goes away, and this ambition drops dramatically just in the percentages females who feel they want to pursue a career in science and math. So we want to be able to help females pursue their ambitions, even though society determines certain people as unfit for certain professions. I think it's important that our school tries to diversify the teaching staff across the departments to make certain genders feel more included in certain fields. Also, dividing gym classes by activity rather than gender in science class. When you have a majority male in physics classes, your gym class also becomes majority male because they're linked. So you often see females being left out of the group activities, or the teacher will randomly assign teams and all the girls end up on one team playing a team of all other girls. It's random though. And so the demographics we find often make gym classes unbalanced gender-wise, and it was suggested that grouping students of similar interests will help students to meet new people, but also even out the genders in gym classes and make gym a more comfortable and safe environment for everyone. And then the last point I want to make is club-driven activities focused on leveling the playing field between genders. I think the biggest one out there right now is Girls That Code, encouraging females to enter these coding classes. I mean, we had a girl there in the gender discussion panel who was from Girls Who Code, who told us that in her AP computer science class this year, she was one of 4 females in a class of about 20. That's a huge difference, and helping clubs that encourage students to challenge themselves despite demographic barriers, I think are really important and relevant right now for our school.
So switching gears a little bit, we did want to thank the school district and the board for a couple of notable things that have happened this year, particularly the Stanford Challenge Success Survey, because it shed light on a lot of these issues that we were unaware of we were aware of, but we didn't have the complete evidence to understand them previously. And I think that's incredibly important. Thanks to Ms. Baglio for running Bagels with the Board, which was absolutely excellent. And I encourage my classmates in future years, if they have the opportunity, to go as well. It's a comfortable environment to talk to people who really want to listen. Unfortunately, this is probably not the best environment for all students. So that kind of a comfortable environment really matters, and it helps us express what we're feeling in a way that we couldn't otherwise do.
And may I say thanks for your suggestion to hold one at Princeton High School at 3 o'clock, which we will plan to do at some point during the next school year to make it easier for staff and students to attend. So thank you, and thank you for being there. That was great.
We would also like to thank the high school administration and the BSC for experimenting with schedules and looking into how they can reduce student stress and level the playing field in certain senses in the long run. And we think that really matters, and we're glad that we're seeing substantive change, even if it's not happening during our year, but we're very glad that it is coming up. So thank you guys all for giving us the opportunity to implement student voice in so many meaningful conversations that do happen in this district. And we hope that there will be more opportunities for all of our classmates like tonight, for them all to get a chance to express what they're thinking. But with any strength comes weaknesses, and there are areas that still clearly need to be improved. Mental health is one that we're going to continuously stress. It's very tied into achievement pressure and lack of sleep. But I think more importantly for tonight, we know that racial issues are more at the forefront of what needs to happen in this community. I particularly want to thank, Elliot and Than for talking about the gap in classrooms and the segregation that happens within our classrooms, and expressing the implications that it has on students in the long term. And this is something that we didn't see in the Stanford data, and I think it's important that we nevertheless focus on how important of an issue it is, even if we couldn't see it in the numbers. So thank you guys so much for bringing that up. I urge people to come to our classrooms and take a look, walk in our hallways during lunch, and you'll understand what they're talking about and why it's so important to them. But then there's also a piece of information from what my classmates were saying that I believe is still missing. And it's that all of this is focused about our students of color, but it's more than just about our students of color. This is a disservice to all students in Princeton High School. There's a lot of ideas that you guys have stated that there's no way I would even be able to express them, and I haven't experienced them, so I'm not going to try to touch some of those issues. But for all other students, for Asian students, for white students, for us to grow up with these kind of groups that are implicitly segregated within a school, it's a disservice to us. It means that we're going to enter a world that is a global community with a very myopic perspective, with our internal perceptions And that's something that's absolutely not okay. And what is a bigger concern is that racism permeates through generations. So we could very easily pass it on to the next generation, but we have the ability as educators, as an educational institution, to say it stops now, to say no, and I think that's something that really does need to happen. So wrapping things up now, this past year we spent learning about budget management, contracts, litigation, inflation, demographic statistics, zoning, the politics of bureaucracy, and basically everything except for education has been a truly incredible experience, and it will no doubt influence what we do and how we do it for the rest of our lives. Sitting up here on behalf of our classmates one final time, we want to express how immensely appreciative we are of the work that you do and that you are listening to us tonight and hopefully from now on more often.
Yeah, and I just also want to say that it's just been such an honor to work with each and every one of you. I mean, I don't know, I just like love coming to these and talking to, it's so strange. I like being able to represent my students and share their ideas with you. I think they have so many, such great things to say and such great suggestions, and I just really appreciate that you all take the time to listen and talk to us outside of the board meetings as well, and just really make sure that our voices are heard, and it's just nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I apologize if it seems I'm not very focused and all the FaceTime calls, but I promise you it's going to make sense in a moment. So with all of that said, we reluctantly step aside and pass on the torch to your next pair of highly motivated student liaisons.
Mm-hmm.
Are we allowed to ask you all a couple questions about this before you pass?
Yes,
it on?
you are.
One quick question on the discouraging, cheating, and changing testing practices. Do you have any concrete things you would tell your teachers to do to change testing? Oh. Usually I'm so loud, don't need this. But do you have any concrete things you would tell your teachers to do to change the testing practices to discourage cheating? If you want to throw it out there,
Yeah.
if you have some that you've heard.
I mean, I think having teachers change the tests for every period of the day. I know information sometimes leaks between the different periods, as well as the tests from last year. They're still in circulation. Can't use those either. And I also think that teachers should reevaluate what they're testing the students on and what's fair and reasonable to test the students on as well. I think that sometimes teachers assume that the students might know a little bit more than they originally thought, and sometimes the tests feel kind of unfair, and I think that teachers should be really open to students coming in and sharing that they felt unprepared for certain aspects of the test. And yeah.
And then otherwise, changing the schedule hopefully will additionally alleviate stress. If you don't have every single class, every single day, you're not pressed to do the work for every single period, every single day. Hopefully there will be a little more time in there for students to study and prepare. And if that reduces the academic achievement pressure, then that's actually strongly correlated through research with how people cheat. So hopefully with that reduction in stress levels, which we would expect to see, then we'll see cheating fall as well.
Well, it's just interesting. I think this is maybe what Mr. Snyder was alluding to, but you know, sort of the old model of education is do your own work, and not share with anybody and do it all yourself in terms of rather than collaborating. And I'm not sure how much it didn't say in the survey how much cheating was sort of collaboration. When you get a job in the private sector and you do all your own work and you don't share, you get fired. So you're expected to work in teams. You're expected to collaborate with other people. That's how people are effective. And so it's just interesting that we have this paradigm of cheating, which is there's such a thing. I'm not saying there's not, but maybe in a different environment there'd be less cheating because there's less requirement of doing everything by yourself.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, so.
Thank you. We'll miss y'all.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what your major is going to be next year? One last bit. Am I allowed?
They're majors?
They're going to college.
They're majors?
You know what? For now, we'll just say we're both undecided.
Yes.
Could you tell us where you're going to school next year? That'd be nice to know.
I'm going to Northeastern University.
And I'm going to Duke University.
Wonderful.
Congratulations to both of you. They are wonderful.
Okay, so yeah, now we're finally at this ending point, and we're about to step aside to our next group of liaisons, and we have Brian Liu and Amy Wang, who are our next two liaisons. So Brian, if you could come up. And unfortunately, Amy could not be here today, and evidently our FaceTime was having a little bit of trouble. So I think she's gonna stay on the phone with you guys for today. Amy, can you hear us? Yeah, I can. Okay. Okay, Brian, we're gonna step back now.
Welcome, Brian.
She's on the phone. You can put her on speaker and just hold her up to the mic. I think that would.
Hello, everyone. So, first off, before we introduce each other, I would first like to thank Brian and Abby for doing an excellent job. And frankly, I am very honored to be exactly one vowel away from Brian Lee's name. So I guess that makes introductions a little bit easier, right? So I'd like to thank them for the excellent job they have done at the wonderful progress they have made at making school a more livable place for all of us. And I'm also like to express interest in working with all of you right now. Yeah. We'll figure this out. Yeah. Let's see what we got. Oh, wait, they can't hear you. Oh, God. Is it on speaker? I think it's on speaker. Can we try again? Speaker's on the bottom, okay. We learn something new every day. The volume is, oh, okay.
There you go.
Okay. Amy, try again.
Yeah, hi, can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I'm incredibly sorry about having to do this through the phone. I really wanted to be there, but I just had some travel plans and I couldn't be there in person. So to begin, I am more than happy to introduce Brian Liu as one of the new student liaisons. Brian is an incredibly friendly person who dedicates his time as a member of PHS people. Brian's team was recently ranked 15th in the junior varsity and was nationally ranked last year, and then 19th again in varsity this year, which definitely speaks to his dedication on the team. As a side note, he's also a huge history nerd and loves to read up on everything history related. Brian is also a member of PHS's Odyssey of the Mind team, which competes in creative problem-solving tasks and long-term projects. His resourcefulness and ability to think outside the box will undoubtedly be an asset as a new student liaison this year.
Thanks, Amy. So, the lovely person I have on this phone over here is my fellow liaison, Amy Wang. And I have known Amy since first moving here freshman year, and that is something I am both proud and thrilled to say. Why, you might ask? Well, I have never met someone as dedicated to the things that she applies her multitude of talents to. For one, at this moment, I currently have the editor-in-chief and former sports editor of our school newspaper, The Tower, on speakerphone right here. She has also been on student council for the past 2 years, so she definitely has served our school community very well for the past 2 years. And this is also intertwined with her impressive speaking abilities that you have heard and will shortly hear once again due to her history with our school's public forum debate team. And lastly, her presence on the township's youth advisory committee is a reflection of her dedication, which hopefully all of you will get very well acquainted with next year as we work to serve our community. And in addition, just one last side note, she loves photography. If any of you have seen it, it's amazing.
Okay, great. So we're just going to get started in terms of the ideas that we would like to pursue next year. So one effort that we would like to pursue next year is fostering diversity in academics as well as extracurriculars. And I'm really glad that we had this showing of students earlier today and got their voices and kind of narratives told. So we are really supportive of the changes to the US1 curriculum that happened at the high school recently. And in addition to those, we would like to include the history of Princeton, specifically that of segregation, and Princeton's history of segregation and desegregating at a later time than those other places within the U.S. history curriculum to allow students to make better connections with what they learn, and the place that they're living in. Additionally, after attending the community conversations on racism, we believe that having Ms. Satterfield, if she's comfortable in doing so, come in for an assembly for PHS students, it would give students a better understanding of the dynamics of racism that stem from like a personal experience that she had as someone who moved to a recently desegregated school. So another issue that Elliot Wiley had brought up was the narrative that gets conveyed in English classes, wherein like the core books that people read only include depictions of Black people as slaves or as criminals. And as someone who personally read Alice Walker's The Color Purple in my English class, Brian and I would like to strongly advocate that the English curriculum includes books like those as well as the core text. We believe that including powerful books like The Color Purple is a step in the right direction to change the reinforcement of a lot of negative stereotypes that exist, and in general, greater diversity and representation of people of color who are very much a part of American history and therefore should be in American literature as well, deserve a place and voice in our classes. Finally, on the topic of diversity, we would like to advocate for earlier outreach for various clubs in the middle school, just like Valeria had previously suggested with introducing sports to gym classes. So we feel as though a lot of internalized stereotypes and expectations often mold the decisions that high schoolers make, which then will affect their extracurricular pursuits. So one really striking observation that has been brought up multiple times is the lack of Black and Hispanic students in the performing arts, like orchestra and band, or in clubs, debate, and Model United Nations. And we believe that earlier exposure to these types of activities by facilitating outreach to the middle school for these clubs in order to increase diversity and allow for opportunities for students of color and really just all students to discover an activity that they love and then have the opportunity to pursue in high school.
Right. So, in regards to our PHS's stress culture, in regards to the results of the Stanford School Survey on student stress, we would like to implement additional policies to further progress for student health and welfare. And some ideas include a school-wide screening process for depression with assemblies that promote greater awareness and understandings of mental illness and how it affects all of us as high schoolers. And and how to reach out for help and amending the bell schedule to accommodate potential later start times, which is something we will work with here. And in addition to expand option 2 for stressed student athletes, and I underlined and italicized students to really emphasize that on the script here, but so that they can make time for their heavy workloads in addition to playing their sports that they have dedication to by giving them a free period instead of a gym class for seasons that they do play a sport in. So another initiative we would like to look into is to have a cap on the number of AP exams that students can register here in order to mitigate the culture of stress that is so prevalent at our school. So not only would it make a lower amount of APs appear more favorable on the college apps, which is probably something favorable to my fellow students here, and also cause students to pursue and to focus on only what they're interested in instead of simply cramming APs to make a resume just to look a little bit prettier for a college. So Moreover, we have noticed that students appreciate the homework-free weekends that have been implemented by Brian and Abby, and we look to continue the progress that they have made by implementing more frequent as well as more timely homework-free weekends. That would definitely help cut down on stress for a lot of the heavy workloads of our student body and give them more time to explore other options that they would like to in our life. And we will be more than happy to give homework suggestions for teachers of the amount of homework that they should be giving in classes particularly at around certain times, such as AP seasons. Like a week, something that we would like to look into is to reduce homework and testing both a week before as well as during AP testing season, because that is frankly a bit of a nightmare for some of us. Right. So another one of the more miscellaneous concerns that we have been hearing quite a bit during the election season is over some of the more unusual filters of our wonderful guest Wi-Fi. So for example, websites that are classified as either arts or culture or global religions are inaccessible on devices connected to said Wi-Fi, and quite often class progress is significantly stinted by these specific filters. And getting board permission to have IT tweak some of these filters to accommodate for more progress will hopefully improve some of our students' educations.
Thank you, Brian. I'm sure you've got more suggestions, and you got a whole year to implement them, so.
Amy?
Okay, yeah. So additionally, we believe that there should be greater student input that reflects teacher performance at the end of the year. So we believe that distributing surveys from students on their experiences would be helpful for department heads to take into account when making any changes to either the curriculum or in general just to improve the learning experience that is beneficial to both teachers and students.
Thanks, guys. So everything I said about time management, we'd be out of here before midnight. I take it all back. So, but I appreciate your guys' time. We do have to move on, and we've got other committees to go through. So we should talk offline a little bit about how you implement, how you go through this. But we really appreciate all your thoughts, and I know you're very enthusiastic to get started. So we really appreciate that. So welcome, and we will be back. We will be in touch, and as I said, we've got a year to work through this long list of issues that you have. So it's very exciting that you're ready to go.
Thank you.
So moving on, if we can turn now to our committee report highlights, and we start with, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the online. Which committee first? Facilities. So that's So, sorry, Daphne, sorry about that.
Okay. So facilities met yesterday. Yeah, it is. Facilities met yesterday here in Valley Road at 11:15 for 3 hours. The committee met with the architects who we're working with to plan for the rising enrollment and changes in the district. The committee and the architects reviewed the suggestions for a referendum. We will continue to adjust the referendum work as per the committee's recommendation and keeping costs in mind. The architects next discussed the project to install trailers to be used for offices for high school faculty. The location, layout of the units, and schedule were discussed and accepted by the committee. Right now, our hope is to put the trailers on the side of Houghton, thank you, Houghton, and that is the best situation for the teachers and also for the community. The trailers will include air conditioning, and there will be bathrooms and a small kitchen. The only holdup we anticipate is Department of Education approval and/or delays from PSE&G. The administration is working hard to limit any delays. The target date for completion is the beginning of the school year. We continue to discuss water testing results. Any fixtures that tested higher than the action level of 15 parts per billion have been turned off and are not operable. Although test results in all remaining fixtures were below the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection action level, in our attempt to achieve the desired goal of 0 parts per billion in all classroom drinking fountains will be taken out of service. The schools will receive water cooler units that accept water bottles. Paper cups will be supplied for students who don't have their water bottles. And additionally, the administrators are looking into making water bottles available for children if possible. None of the test results have proven to be at a level for concern. And our next meeting is July 16th at 11 o'clock at Valley Road? Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Daphne. Next is finance, and I know Justin was absent today. Is one of the other, are you going to give it, Connie?
Yeah. Okay, the Finance Committee met tonight and Tuesday, June 13th. We approved the minutes for May 23rd. Okay, we reviewed the financial report, and we ended the year in the black. So everything's good. Okay, and and any excess funds will go into our capital reserve. So we ended the year in the black, which is very good. So any excess funds will go into our capital reserve, okay? The Finance Committee is also looking into long-term projects, and we're looking forward to other committees bringing their ideas to us so we can budget for the following year, 2017, 2018. Okay. Our next meeting will be July 17th here at Valley Road.
And one of the other things we just discussed, and it's again, is we're talking about that kind of, intermeshing between the various committees and the whole board, is, we've talked about this before, some longer-term planning. Our budget cycle tends to be a year. And, we've been fortunate that we have tax increases, of enrollment waivers and other things that would have allowed us to increase taxes. But we've also obviously been very tight on expenses. But over the longer term, there may be interfaces between our curriculum, our building projects, and our overall operating budget, and to think about ways to put that together over a period of years is something we'd like to work on. So we talked about that as well. Next, Connie, it's up to you again on personnel.
Okay. The Personnel Committee, we met on yesterday, June 12th. Okay, we reviewed our minutes for May 22nd, and they were approved. Okay, the committee listened to an appeal for a residency determination, and the committee concluded that the students were not domiciled in the district, and unless living in Princeton by the time they start the next school year, they will not be allowed to attend the school in the district. Okay. Brenda Sewell, Communications Coordinator for the district, gave an update on the alumni outreach program. An email has been sent out to approximately 1,000 alumni, and they have responded. 400 have responded and agreed to become part of the alumni committee network in just 1 week. So the goal, yeah, it is. The goal of the alumni network is to link students with alumni and alumni with the school. A Facebook and LinkedIn page are being developed. Okay. The committee reviewed a new job description for the position of Director of Technology and Innovation, which focuses on technology staff working with educational staff to meet educational and community needs for the schools and various programs. New hires orientation. New hire orientation will take place August 28th through August 31st here at Valley Road. Okay. We've appointed a new drama teacher for JW. So the music department is alive and well at JW. The committee reviewed the list of leaves for absences for June. The committee discussed several confidential matters involving district personnel and programs. Our next meeting will be July 10th here at Valley Road.
Thank you, Connie. Next, policy co-chairs Betsy Baglio and Daphne Kendall.
Yes, it's Betsy's turn.
Betsy's
My
turn,
turn
okay.
this month. We met on June 5th at 1 p.m. in this room. Our May minutes were approved. Princeton High School Principal Gary Snyder attended our policy meeting for the second time in 2 months to discuss proposed changes to the PHS handbook. These changes will include a new section of the Code of Conduct, which defines bias incidents that take place and are reported in school or take place out of school and significantly disrupt learning. As such, bias incidents will be included in the Code of Conduct, and the associated disciplinary actions will be defined in the upcoming updated PHS handbook, which will be out in the fall. The final version of this language for the handbook will be discussed again with Mr. Snyder at the next policy meeting, which is June 19th, and we will also discuss implications for updates to the John Witherspoon Middle School handbook as well. A member of the community, these are public meetings, and a lot more, and we have many more community members coming to policy meetings, which we're very happy about. A member of the community suggested that students should constantly be referred back to the handbook and reminded of the handbook throughout the year, not just sort of signing off on it once as part of an ongoing and consistent conversation. And those in attendance discussed how students can be supported so they grow from these experiences. Brian Dubinsky returned to the policy meeting as well to discuss a revision to the policy related to sports-related head injuries. That's on the agenda tonight for a first reading. We've added a sentence or two that indicates the district will provide an alternative test, an alternative impact test if a child requires modifications, and this can be requested by the parent or district staff. 2 policies related to staff physical examinations are on tonight's agenda for a second reading, and we have added a meeting June 19th. Our discussion was quite good and quite long on June 5th about the handbook, so we are meeting again June 19th to finish that work and also complete the rest of our June agenda. So that'll be at 1 o'clock here at Valley Road. This summer policy will meet on July 10th and August 1st, both at 12 noon, and we invite and encourage the public to attend.
Thank you. And finally, student achievement. Again, you're back on.
I'm back
that,
on.
yeah.
Let me change to that. Okay. So we've had 2 student achievement meetings here in this room. Again, many members of the public are joining us for these meetings. We met June 2nd and June 9th, the last 2 Fridays at 11 a.m. May minutes were approved. Several new textbooks were presented and approved for the new World Religions course at PHS. That we've heard there are 70 juniors and seniors enrolled in this new elective, which is very exciting. We also heard about a new book, Old School, for the English 4 syllabus, and a new textbook for the ELL World History course. We've had several departmental curriculum reviews. It's sort of curriculum review season here, and they've been terrific: health and phys ed, science, and community service and service learning. Carol Roche presented the professional development offerings to the board that have been made available this summer. Over 100 teachers, I believe, are currently enrolled in many of these courses, which include racial literacy, curriculum design, and improving the freshman experience. So we're really excited to hear how those go. Carol and Annie shared that elementary principals have examined field trips at every level K-5 and have identified one common field trip for each grade level. And so these new field trips, some are new, some are existing, and some exist in some elementary schools, but not all. So there will be one common for every grade level, and they're aligned with science or social studies standards. And we will hear an update again on this in December. We continue to talk about recess and concerns about the length of recess, and we will keep returning to that topic as well. Brian Dubinsky shared results of a survey from the first year of Option 2. 31 of the 55 students who completed the program took the survey. 2/3 of the students found it to be useful for them. Some changes have been put in place for Option 2 for next year, and we talked about that quite a bit, and we're excited to hear about that work. Mark Shelley and Jen Bigioni came to give us an update on the AP-AT discussion, and that a lot of that discussion is still happening, but they have recommended that AP courses would be maintained for some subjects, but also developing a new strand of college-level courses called Advanced Inquiry, or AI, as part of a more standardized program of studies. So throughout, it would not start for the coming school year, but these would all be sort of developed by December for the program of studies for the next school year. Mark Shelley also presented the redesigned summer reading list, which requires students to do no work other than read over the summer. And they've added choice and hopefully reduced stress over the summer, and we commend them for that. Mr. Snyder and colleagues from PHS gave an update on the work of the Bell Committee, which you heard tonight. We appreciate him being here to share it with the full board. And we look forward as Student Achievement to working to support these changes, things like the new schedule for the 18-19 school year. We will get that to you as soon as possible, since that includes an earlier start date. We know that affects families and their planning. Brenda Sewell came to share the most recent draft of the parent engagement survey, which we look to distribute later in June. And the exit survey is being sent out currently to families who are leaving the district, and we are happy to have that data. So the next Student Achievement meeting is Thursday, July 13th at 10 a.m. Here in this room, we invite the public to attend.
Thanks, Betsy. There's so much there that we could talk about, but just 2 things I want to highlight. One is all the surveys and the data that you're collecting, so I really commend you for that. It's just so important to get data and information in order to solve problems, and I think for the folks that were interested in achievement gap and in the racial issues that we're feeling in the schools, getting data, I think is very important on that, so that we know exactly what to address and how to address it. So that's one thing. And then just in terms of the advanced topics or AI courses. That is really exciting. And, if you were in that presentation, it was really exciting to hear. I mean, a complaint that the board has had about many AP classes is, we all were concerned about the PARCC test being a teaching to the test moment, but there are so many teaching to the test moments in these AP classes. When we've got so many bright students and so many really talented teachers, why are we teaching a standardized course that's not, using the best talents in our district? So that is a really exciting development, so I commend you guys on working on that. Yes.
Just say one thing, Brian,
Sure.
just to go back to your objective of limiting AP classes. So a bunch of the social humanities teachers went up to Scarsdale a few times, and Scarsdale has done away with their AP testing, and they have this advanced topics. And they were surprised to learn, they did the student engagement survey as well, and they were surprised to learn that doing away with the AP testing did not increase, sorry? Oh, sorry, the AP class did not increase student wellness. So that was very interesting, and I think that's going to guide us moving forward. So it's not a panacea. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, we're at item J, which is a public forum, which is comment only on agenda items. So if anyone in the public has a comment, this is specifically for items that are in the agenda. And we may have a taker on that, Dr. Carell.
Hi, Bob Carell, I teach at the high school. Oh, you don't need the timer, I'll be quick. First, I want to say I'm very happy to see on the personnel agenda this month, for the fourth time in recent months, somebody's being promoted from within. And I'm very excited about this promotion because I happen to know the person very well. I consider her a friend, and I think she's very highly qualified to take on the Director of Guidance position, so I'm very excited and very happy to see that. I also want to comment on the board liaison's departure. I really think Maddie and Nick a year ago really set the bar to a new level, and it's something, Brian, you've got to learn to live up to, because Brian and Abby took it to a whole new level, that you guys really have something to live up to, for a change from before where the student board members would give their reports and then leave. Now we have student board members who actually stay through the whole board and are engaged in every effort, down to the budget negotiations, which is really interesting. It's been a very interesting year for me to work with the board. It's been a very, I think, complementary relationship between the board and the teachers this year, starting way back in September with policy discussions about the electronic communications policy, which is kind of amusing because halfway through the year, one of your student liaisons decided to friend me on Facebook, and I had to decline for the time being. So I declined. No, I haven't actually responded. I got it sitting there for after he graduates. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm back. I'm still Maddie. I wanted to comment on something that Brian and Abby brought up, and then quickly on the bell schedule. So Brian, in the context of the gender gap, brought up the fact, or the rate at which PHS students cheat. And he asked an important question, which is, why are they doing this? And this is something that I've been thinking about for a while and that I've talked with my friends about quite a bit, because we're interested by the fact that we're all like really curious people who want to learn a lot. And yet we're very frequently faced with the choice between cheating and actually learning. And we've spent a lot of time thinking about that. And so basically the reasons that I've been able to boil it down to are, one, that the option between cheating and failure is not one that Princeton High School students are willing to take. They're not okay with failure because the community tells them that it's not an acceptable option. I think that's not something the board can solve. We live in Princeton, a town with a university that I think sends a pretty clear message about what success looks like and about what intellectual achievement looks like, but that creates an environment in which academic failure isn't really on the table. Second, because there's literally so much work in our afternoons that sometimes the choice comes down to sleeping or copying someone else's calculus homework. And no one wants to make that choice, but at some point, after enough all-nighters, you do just pick the sleep. And I don't think anyone is excited by that, but it becomes kind of a survival skill of the basic life necessities versus your homework. Third, in terms of teaching. When students feel that a teacher isn't putting time or respect into their work, which is rare, honestly, like in my experience here, I've had a number of incredibly dedicated and passionate teachers, but there are the teachers who aren't perceived by the students as really caring about their work, and students respond that way. We know that we're supposed to kind of blindly defer to all authority, but when you're like 17 or 18 and a teacher isn't respecting you as a human being or a learner or whatever, you find it quite a bit harder to respect them as a teacher and as an educator. And at that point, your incentive to act with integrity is sufficiently reduced as to make it easier to cheat, because you don't feel that there's kind of a mutual relationship of everyone doing their best and everyone giving as much as they can to the educational process. And lastly, and this kind of goes back to what I started with, is that the difference between learning and on-paper success is really, really big, particularly in our school, and that it's possible to go through PHS and learn very little, but get a really good GPA, and therefore achieve what our town defines as the epitome of success. There are students who will go to the aforementioned highly elite university in our town. There are quite a number of students going there this year. Quite a number of them are able to do so not necessarily via learning, because the way that the college application process works is decidedly on paper, GPA based. And when that's the structure and that's the world that we live in, it becomes very easy to say, all right, I'll play that game. If the only way to get affirmation and supposed success and the joy that people are telling me this is going to bring me is by doing the things that are going to get me an A, then fine, I'll do that. I give in. It's the path of least resistance. And so I think those are some of the reasons at the core of the fact that 90% of students coming out of Princeton High School are cheating. I mean, that's an astoundingly high number. Like, only 1/10 of students have not cheated. So I think, it's a bigger problem than anyone here can solve, but I do think it is important that kind of the adults in the room are aware of what's driving it, because I think it can be easy to forget as you get distance from the high school life. So that's cheating. Bell schedule, 1, thank you. I'm really excited. I'll be out of here next year, but my sister's a rising freshman, and I'm so glad that she's not going to be sitting through 8 periods that are exactly identical to each other for 5 days in a row for however many weeks in a year. I mean, that's a huge relief to me. The thought of that makes my stress levels go down. I would have had a much better high school experience if my days had not been the same. It makes you feel like a robot, and it's dehumanizing almost. Like, you don't want to feel like you're in that rote machine of just getting through your day, and I think this will help with that, and I'm really glad that it's happening. My only piece of constructive thing is please, when you're doing these things to address stress and student wellness, talk to the guidance counselors. That's just my singular piece of advice. I didn't get to see if any of them were listed on the Bell Schedule Committee, but please God, they're the ones seeing what it looks like day to day. I've spoken with my guidance counselor at length about the culture at PHS, and she understands it in more depth than any other adult in the building that I've talked to, because these are the people working closely with the students who the students are confiding in about their emotional well-being. And so please, when you're trying to figure out what to do and what students need, go to them. They want to help, they know how to help, and they have probably more information than anyone else with which to do so. So please, use them as a resource. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. Speaking of conversations that we need to have, that to me, that's always been one, and I've never really found the right forum to talk about it, is that idea of what constitutes academic success versus what's learning. How important is it to go to this college or that college? Now that I'm a little older, I can say that I've hired many people in my life, and I don't care where they went to college. I just don't. It's not even the third or fourth or fifth consideration, and yet around here, it's number one, and it shouldn't be. It just shouldn't be. It should be about learning. But, again, we all understand the pressures that you just talked about when you were talking about cheating. But somehow that culture has to change. It just has to. So thank you for your comments. Any other comments on the agenda, on the forum tonight in item J? Okay. If there are none, then we'll move to item M, which has some roll call votes, and then also we want to recognize the retirements this year. So, and then we're going to come back around and approve most of the rest of the agenda all at once. So, So I need a motion for item M1, which are the personnel actions listed on item M1 in the attachments. If anyone wants to leave, and, you know, I know it's late, especially for the students, we're not offended, so thank you for coming. Yeah.
Vern? Okay, second?
Second, Connie.
Connie.
And this is a roll call vote, so,
Okay.
and we can do this electronically?
Yes, we
Ms. Connie?
can.
Okay.
I'll open it up electronically and you can vote your pleasure. I'm waiting for one last vote. Oh, there it goes.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion passes.
Okay, and now we're on M2, which is another roll call vote. I need a motion, please. Oh, Greg and second Connie.
Okay. Please vote.
Okay, so, and are the votes still coming in?
Yep, they're just finished.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
with that, we can move to item M5, which are the retirements. And Louis, do you have some people you'd like to talk about?
On tonight's agenda, we have a retirement. Tim Pataki, after 34 years of service. Tim has served as the custodial supervisor at various schools, including the high school and Riverside, and has done an excellent job over the years, and we wish him well. We do have 13 individuals who are retiring during the school year, which are comprising over 300 years of service, including Christoph Olias, who had 25 years, John Baxter, 19, Connie Escher, 26, Adele Hagedorn, 35, Diane Leffenfeld, 22, Bonnie Liet, 16, Lori Rotz, 8, Pamela Solomon, 31, Peter Thompson, 41, Bill Velacci, 4, Rosie Volsi, 32, and Debbie Zach, 21 years. So for over 300 years of institutional knowledge. And we wish them all well.
Okay, and then, thank you, Lou. And then we have one more action item, which is P13, which we're going to do as a vote. I think we're going to have at least one abstention on P13. But, so we just do this as a roll
It's just
call.
as a motion.
A motion. So we need a motion and a, Betsy, and a second, Connie.
Okay, online voting open. Please vote.
No.
There it is.
Oops. Hold on a
Error.
second. There we go. Sorry.
I got an error.
All right, sorry, go ahead. Somebody said it wasn't up, so I re-clicked on it. So please vote. If you've already voted, if you don't see it, vote again. I only see one vote in.
Okay, got it.
Should be coming up. There it comes, okay.
Okay.
Voted twice?
Voted twice.
Yeah.
Vote often.
Vote
Yeah.
often, vote early, vote often.
Okay.
Early and often.
No.
Okay,
Do
and
yours again.
then,
Wait 1 second.
okay, sorry.
The couple people that had voted originally, you need to vote again.
Well,
So
But it has to pop up.
Let's pop up, right?
it should, you gotta refresh it. Up here and refresh that. Yeah, in the little circle.
You go to change vote.
That's what, it worked for me.
Okay. Click back on that. Okay.
Okay.
I have one last.
Me?
Bill. Sorry.
Showing up on my screen.
So try either, do you see the vote on your screen at all?
No, it was there earlier, but it's.
Okay, then you have to maybe refresh.
There we are, there we are.
You see it?
Yep.
Okay.
It felt Gabe's presence coming over.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm now closing online voting, and I am saving it. Okay.
Okay, so that leaves us to item R, which is the consent vote on all the consent agenda items, which is everything else that we passed over in the agenda. I can list them out, but it's basically everything else.
It's everything else.
Everything but
The ones we already
J,
voted on.
M1, M2, and P13.
Can I, we have to make a motion.
But we need a motion, and
Well, we can't make a motion if somebody wants to take something out of consent, or you just want to talk
I just
about
want
it?
to ask a question.
Oh, okay.
okay, so
Then
first,
let's-
before we do
okay.
that, we need a motion to
Okay.
discuss any of those items all at once, but I mean a motion to bring it onto the floor. Greg, and second, Debbie. Okay, so,
Okay, Gary, thank you for staying through this very long meeting. I wanted to ask you about the pool replaster. When do you think that'll take place? Only because I saw the pool close up this week, and oh my goodness, it needs it, yeah.
It actually looks worse than it really is. So just from the staining, it really isn't as bad as it appears. But it's scheduled to happen at the end of August.
Okay, great.
Actually, more like mid-August. And maybe a week into September, because once the plastering is done, the pool's refilled, it has to be brushed down and maintained for about a week. So right around, probably just past the beginning of the school year before they're open.
Okay, great, thank you.
okay, any other questions or comments on any of the other agenda items?
Yeah, I had a question on N3. I just didn't know what it was.
Which was it?
The
N?
N. Yeah. I just-
Okay, so what that is private schools do not have, do not participate in free and reduced lunch programs.
Okay.
They do often serve lunch, and it's included in the tuition. And most of these where they relate to us are for special education placements.
Oh, so this is a student that we are paying
Yes.
for somewhere. And
Right,
that's-
and
okay.
and the school, what the school does is, they have to, as the resolution says, we have to acknowledge that they're not in the program and that the lunch for these particular students are paid for within their tuition.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, go ahead.
Can I make a comment on N5, our summer programs? So we have a long list there of the programs that we've typically offered in the district, the Jumpstart, LEAP programs. But we have two programs as part of a new initiative, our Summer Enrichment for Equity and Diversity, sort of SEED. And one of those programs, Dr. Carell is going to be helping to teach, and it's talked about on the front page of the Tower, the latest edition of the Tower, a summer chemistry class to increase representation in AP classes. So we're incredibly excited about this course. We have 23 students signed up for this class, including 8 students who would be underrepresented in some of the accelerated or AP classes. So that's one thing we're tremendously excited about. 5 weeks in the summer for those students, and then for our middle school students, we have a summer enrichment program in engineering and science. We've identified really promising students who are, again, underrepresented in higher level courses at the high school, but we've identified them in middle school. And we're giving them this enrichment experience and hopefully an opportunity to be mentored by some of the students in the high school class. And we just learned this week that the Princeton Area Community Foundation is funding this particular course for us. So we're thrilled. We're thrilled to be
That's
getting that grant, and
wonderful.
we're thrilled to be doing some of the things that our students were asking us to do to increase representation in our high level classes. So just wanted to make that commercial plug for some good work.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the rest of the board agenda items. Okay, then we'll take a vote.
Okay, this is many, many resolutions.
Yes.
Voting
It's
is
a big one.
opened. Okay, thank you.
Okay, with,
All those resolutions pass.
great, okay. And so now we're on any old business, new business, which I believe there's none, if there's any questions or comments, right? And finally, our last public comment period for anyone who's left, stuck around this long. And this is on any topic. So, seeing none, then,
Old business, new business, just in our bagels with the board, there was just, very, very eye-opening, just a lot of very refreshing commentary. So thank you for following through with that, for those good actions. I learned a lot, and I appreciate the opportunity to come over and to be part of that. So thank you.
And for those who may still be watching at home, we thank you. And I believe we had probably, 25 people come to that very first opportunity to just have an informal conversation with members of the board. So
And I think there were more than that over the course of because people could sort of came in and out, right? Yeah.
And there were 8 board members present, and all 4 of our high school board members are new, current, and our previous high school board members. So I want to thank all of you for jumping in enthusiastically as well. September 29th is the next one, 8:30 a.m.
great, and it's in
You
keeping with
probably are right
some of the
about
things we've
25.
done.
I'd like to make numbers today. Steve's probably right. He's good at that. Yeah.
But it's in keeping with some of the things we've done. I've noticed there are more, community members at Student Achievement Committee
Oh, yeah.
meetings, at policy committee meetings. There's a lot going on, and it's really great to, and it's great, people here tonight, so it's great to see people engaged in everything that we're doing. I think Daphne pointed out that there was a meeting at the town about parking, which was really well attended, and she's like, why is parking, such an issue, and yet, education for our children? But actually, we're seeing that. We're seeing a lot of interest from the community, and so it's great to see.
Well, and to that end, just a new development to continue to work on our communication tomorrow or the day after. Betsy and I and Brenda will be working on just a communication blast to all the stakeholders in the district and let them know just some highlights of the board meeting, because what Betsy and I have been hearing is that they don't know anything. No one knows anything that's going on. So I guess people aren't watching for 4 hours. But so what we want to do is just highlight some of the things that go on. Like there will be a drama program at continuing at JW in the fall, and things that we know are of concern to the community. So look for that. Thank you.
Yeah, great idea, so thank you for that. Okay, so that, I think, concludes old business. New business, unless, Vern, is there one more? Yeah.
she's just anticipating your motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I have a second on that? Okay, Greg, and so this is our motion to adjourn, and we have to vote on this electronically, right?
No. You have to vote. You don't have to vote on them?
Really? Yeah.
Oh. Oh, those.
All right.
All right.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Nice meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I could have done that for you.
Okay, wow, you picked up a lot of time.
Yeah.
Jeez, that.
We need to